So, welcome everyone to another spectacular episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, live rendition here on February 23rd. We just passed that 2 Tuesday thing, which was really, really cool. But I'm really excited because today we have a returning guest here in our live program that is just pretty cool himself and also onto some really cool things. He has been producing documentaries for over 15 years for purpose-driven entrepreneurs. He's also produced stories for Google, Steve Harvey, and dozens of visionary CEOs. He is the author of a new book, Dramatic Demonstration, which is a roadmap that teaches you how to dig deep to find the compelling stories that no one else knows, and then leverage those stories to grow your business. Thrive Loud listeners and those watching on Facebook, YouTube, and where are we? Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Very excited to have and bring you the Jude Charles. How you doing, my friend Jude? Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, man. Congratulations on 700 episodes now?
We're like in the 7. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I think this one's like in the 730s or something like that. But
that's amazing.
We're queued up to go to 760 already. So, we'll get there. Someone made a joke that when you hit 1,000, I think I should stop, but I don't think I have control of it anymore, Jude.
Right.
That's for sure.
That's amazing though. Cause I think when I came on, it was 335. I was episode 335. So to hit 700, man, that's amazing.
Well, thank you. And but it's also amazing. You're pretty amazing. You've been a very busy individual. So what we like to do on this catch-up episodes, Jude, I want to do a quick rewind. And since you were last on the program, I think we can go probably around the pandemic, because as someone that produces documentaries and really good stories and helping people tell their stories better, I think it would be really cool to get your perspective from the world that you're in, specifically as the pandemic and whatnot, because some people would say, oh my God, the guy must not have been busy at all. But I think that might be the opposite. So bring everybody up to speed if you could, Jude.
Yeah, sure. So I live in South Florida, but I was in Las Vegas when I think it was February 13th when the president decided to close down the borders, and we realized something serious was happening. And for me, it was scary because I had worked through the 2008 recession, and now we were going through a pandemic. And I was afraid of, during the 2008 recession, it had happened where I didn't make $1 during that time. And so I was afraid the same thing would happen again. But what ended up happening was actually much different. I actually was one of maybe 5 people still on an airplane traveling while the world was shut down. I had 2 clients at the time, Stephen Georgi and Darnielle Jervy Harmon, who continued to work throughout the pandemic, and we continued to film their projects throughout the pandemic. And it was very interesting for me because I didn't get any time off. And so although, the pandemic happened in March, I think by the time of October, I had completely burnt out. I remember October 10th, couldn't get out of bed because I had never stopped working. It was I was almost like a machine.
So you went, I want to get this. You went from March of 2020 all the way through the heat of the shutdown, if you would.
Yep.
And you obviously were also here in Florida, and we know that it even picked up even more over the summer and then came back into October. By the way, I mean, you said you just hit a shutdown. It was a pure exhaustion? You just said, I got to kick my feet up and stop?
I think my body gave out. So October 10th, 2020, I just couldn't get out of bed. It took me 2 hours to get out of bed that morning. I'll never forget it. And I think it was just pure exhaustion from 2 things. I think it was work for sure, but I think also the mental exhaustion of fear, because I was waiting for, I assumed in my mind, okay, sure, I'm still doing work, but at some point this is going to stop, because that's what happened during the 2008 recession. And we were being told that we were going through another recession. And so, I think it was just pure physical exhaustion and mental exhaustion. And I realized there was a problem and I had to get help.
Okay. So permission to ask here, what did you do? What kind of help did you seek out, and where did you go from there?
First things first is I went to see a therapist because I knew something was wrong. And it took a while to unpack what was really happening, but what I did was saw a therapist, and I continue to see a therapist today. But the second thing that I did is just really exercise. So last time I was on the show, I talked about how I love to cycle, and I take these 2-hour rides, right?
Right.
Well, I still was cycling, but I decided to go more aggressive with my workouts. And so I was going to Orange Theory Fitness at the time and just really going 3-4 days a week, because I had realized like it wasn't so much the problem wasn't that I was working, but there wasn't any rest time either. That was the real problem. Like there wasn't a balance between work and rest. And at the time, again, I'm young. So I started the business at 17. In my 20s, I could go all day long and work all day long, burn the candle at both ends. But now I'm in my 30s, and I didn't transform and shift the way that I work. And so that was the second thing that I had to fix, is the way that I work. Not working 10-hour days or 12-hour days, even not working the entire week. So now I work only 4 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm sorry, Monday through Thursday, taking Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. But those are the two biggest changes. It was, or three really: getting help, going to see a therapist, exercising regularly. And then the third thing is just changing the way that I work. Right. And so that was really important.
Kudos to you, by the way, for recognizing it, adapting it, and come back. How long did it take you to hit the rebound? When did you start to feel maybe recharged or get into that new flow from that October date moving on?
Yes. So it's taken a while. I'm still in that rebound phase now. When I talk about restructuring the way that I work, two things. I had been in burnout long before I ever realized it. Like my body physically gave out, and that's when I finally realized it. But I had been in it longer than that, and I didn't know. So we figured out the point when it started. But then the other thing is, like, you asked me, how am I rebounding? I'm still learning how to rebound, because initially what happened as I was going through this is that I started to feel less than, because now I can't work the same way I used to work. Right? My identity is tied into the way that I work. And now I have to reconstruct that in my mind, that it's not how I work is not who I am. Right? We've talked about that before on the podcast, right? Like, it's, when people connect with other people, you want to know who you are more than what you do. And as an entrepreneur, you can get lost in the thing that you do is who you are, and it's not the same thing. But not just that, the way that I was working, not just what I did, but the way in which I was working. I'm a type A personality. I like to win. I like to go hard. That doesn't mean, just because I'm doing less of that or pulling back from that, doesn't mean I'm now less than me, my person, me, myself.
Yeah. By the way, I love this for a totally different reason that I don't think you're going to get. And that is part of the thing that we recognize about people who thrive loud. It's not that they're just kicking on all cylinders all day long. It's when they aren't kicking on all cylinders, what they do to get back. And you sought the help, you figured a new structure. But I'm also going to say this, you probably also had to change your mindset. It wasn't just about, like, you like to go all the time. You like that H personality. You want to deliver. You want to deliver for your clients. You may have also had this part of your brain, well, then I'm not going to make as much money. Did that come through your head as well?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It was, my therapist likes to say, who's in the driver's seat? And I think, or what is in the driver's seat? And I think for a long time, fear was in the driver's seat, at least during this pandemic. And I think when you say about changing your mindset, for sure, but even the mindset around, if I work less, and I make good money, but if I work less now, I'm not able to make the same amount of money that I made before. Right. And it is, again, it's a fascinating thing with entrepreneurs, type A personality, but it is that fear of, it's the fear of the unknown. That's really what it boils down to, right? You don't know that now in this quote unquote limited capacity or different capacity that you're able to work, that you're going to be able to make the same amount of money, if not more, right? It's a mindset shift.
You could always just charge more,
Absolutely. But then again, it's the idea of whether you can deliver. So I do this thing called a road mapping session. We talked about it on the podcast last time. And I remember the first road mapping session I did while in burnout. That was my fear. Now that I am in burnout, can I deliver the same way I used to deliver through road mapping? And road mapping is a very intense strategy session. It's an 8-hour session. I'm with a client the entire day. But what I had to do when we talked mindset, what I had to do is I anchored myself. So it's a presentation when I do road mapping. Of course, I'm facilitating the client through it, but I lead with stories. And I had to anchor on a story. It's a story about leadership. And I anchored on the story. And I told myself, all you have to do is get this one thing right. Everything else will take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to you have to get this one story right. It's the opening story of the road mapping session. And that's all I did. I focused on that one story. And it's exactly what happened. Everything else went right. And so it is a mindset shift. It's a challenge. You ask me, how am I rebounding? I'm still rebounding. But I think there's two things that I always focus on. One is the confidence part of it, because I did lose confidence. I lost self-confidence through this journey. It's the confidence. And that's why I say I anchored myself on the one story. But I think the other thing is it's grace that it will take time to quote unquote get it right, but also that I can do it. Like the belief that I can do it, that I can rebound out of burnout. And it's something that I'm calling now dramatic leverage. I'm leveraging the 15-year entrepreneurial history that I've had. I talk about confidence and the fact that, you know what, I've done it before. Whether or not I've raised my prices before, whether or not I've done a big project before, whether or not I've done road mapping before. And I always look at, okay, you've done it before. What's going to stop you from being able to do it again? The only thing that stops me is me.
Yeah.
That's it.
You mentioned, obviously, this was a dramatic shift. And on top of all of that, during your busy time and during your busy year, you decided to put together a very busy project, which is you have dropped just recently your new book, Dramatic Demonstration.
Yes.
Let's do this. First of all, I want to understand, what was the impetus and the reason that you wanted to write this book, and then I'll dive into what it was like putting together this book. Can we permission to do it that way? Is that the right way?
Yeah, let's do it. So the reason I decided to write the book is because at that point I had been an entrepreneur for 13 years, behind the scenes, working with high-level clients. You mentioned some of them at the beginning of this show, Google, Steve Harvey. But I had never documented my own methodology. And that is dramatic demonstration. That's how I do every project. I go through this 3-step process: dramatic clarity, dramatic demonstration, and dramatic leverage. And I had never documented it. And so that was the impetus. It was like, you know what? I only work with 5 clients a year. How could I get more people to understand that it's not enough to just tell your story, but you have to show your story? And that's really what dramatic demonstration is all about. How do you show your story so that other people will believe in what it is that you have to offer and believe in who you are, really? Because we like to say, the famous saying is, people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. Well, how do people get to know who you are, like what you have to say and what you stand for, and then finally trust that you can deliver on the promises that you're making? Is by providing a dramatic demonstration. And one quick thing I want to say about that is, I live and breathe that. The audiobook is not a regular audiobook experience.
Oh,
and
okay.
So the audiobook, I'm reading parts of the book for sure. But just like I say in the opening of the book, I think conversations are much more engaging than just you listening to me read. And so I've been featured on 50 different podcasts. And I'm using segments, including the segments I've done with you, Lou. I'm using segments in the audiobook in order to teach the concepts that I'm talking about. And so, yeah, it's a dramatic demonstration.
I like, spoiler alert, listeners, I did listen to it and I was like, oh yeah, that freaking rocked. That was one heck of a way to take existing content and make the best of it, which is something, by the way, that you are a master of, right? When there's B-roll stuff, there's the video story of everything you deal with. But now I want to understand this. So we just went through a time of burnout. When did the realization come in that I want to write and share this story? Was this something that's been brewing for a long time, or it happened in this window?
Brewing for a long time, since 2018.
Okay.
I didn't actively start writing the book until I think it was in maybe April of 2020. Is that right? Yeah. So there was a person that helped me with writing the book, a book editor and writer as well. That was November 2019 when I met her. And then 2020, obviously the pandemic happened, things had kind of slowed down, or I thought they would slow down. So I'm like, this is a good chance to really structure this book, write it out. That was April of 2020. But it's been a 2-year journey to writing it. But it was definitely in my mind since 2018, because the conversations I was having behind the scenes with people, the one big thing that I kept realizing is, one, people were taking their stories for granted, the true authentic story. And so that's why even when you read my bio, it's about finding those compelling stories that no one else knows, because it's those stories that people are hiding from or believe they're not as important that I look to dig for. But again, I only work with 5 clients a year. How do I get that and more people? Like, how do I get more people to understand how to do that? It's through this book. It is through, again, not just the book, but the audio experience. I really want people to understand how to do it themselves.
Okay. So that's the part that's the most unique of this, because like you said, you work with elite clients.
Yep.
And you figured out a way to help people best tell the story. You're trying to give the skills on that storytelling method to the reader, to the listeners. Now my question here goes a little bit into the how they can do it, because you're providing a way that you can demonstrate it. But one of the skills that you offer is the way you produce and pull it all together in a production. So without letting the whole kit, cat, and caboodle out there, how are you providing the reader with the steps? What's their action items that they take from dramatic demonstration?
Sure. So I love the way that you position this, because there's 2 things I want to say about this, maybe 3. The first thing is, a story is very simple to tell. We tell stories every single day. The story is all about a very specific moment in time. Now, there are people over time that have come around and talked about story structure and the different parts to a story. I think that's great. I don't teach that in the book. What I teach you and what I try to empower you to have is an understanding that a story is about a very specific moment in time. So that's part 1. Part 2, how do you, bring the story to life? You realize the subtitle is not video storytelling as much as it's visual storytelling. Yeah. To me, the visual part can happen while you're speaking on stage. The visual part can happen like this. We're on a podcast. One thing I often do when I'm on a podcast for the first time is I'll talk about Mrs. Donnelly, who gave me my first set of business cards at 17 years old and how I got started in business. And one thing I'll do is I'll hold up, got to hold it up the right way, but I hold up the first set of business cards. I still have it framed, and I hold it up so people can see it. That is another way to do visual storytelling, right? And then, so again, how you do it is I break down these 5 different dramatic demonstrations. And now that they're principles. And when you understand the principles, then you're empowered to be able to do it on your own, even if all you're using is your camera phone.
Yeah. By the way, great idea, great need, because I think what is lacking in the world today is the right direction, I guess, in the way that you need to demonstrate. I even I was poking fun listeners before we hit record, that dramatic demonstration is a lot of letters in only 2 words, but it's actually intentionally and maybe probably very dramatic.
Yep.
Purposeful visual storytelling is so powerful and is not used enough.
Yeah.
I've got a good question, and this is, when you were telling your story and you deal with this, did you kind of check back in? Like, a lot of times when people are putting the book together, they have the methodology, and then something uncovers or something new pops out or something maybe surprises you. Jude, when you were putting together this project, what was the happy accident or surprise that came out of this process?
I think what came out of it is the dramatic leverage part. So I mentioned in dramatic demonstration, I teach 3 different phases. Dramatic clarity, that's where you find the stories. You dig really deep to find the stories. Dramatic demonstration is how you bring the stories to life. But I think dramatic leverage was a thing that surprised me. I had early readers of the book, of course. But what surprised me about that is not so much that people are afraid to tell their stories, don't know how to put the stories together. It's not really that. It is, how do I make money from this story? As entrepreneurs, how do I make money from this story? How do I use this story and leverage it in a way that it helps me to do something I haven't been able to do on my own?
Yeah.
What's fascinating about that for me is because I've had to think about, as I restructure the business, I've had to rethink how I work, I've had to rethink what I offer when I'm working. And what comes with that is my story. So the story of burnout is also a story of depression. I was diagnosed with burnout and depression at the same time. But my new mission now is to lead and empower entrepreneurs to have relentless courage. But that starts with changing the story that's in your head. And it's a dramatic demonstration that you can do for yourself. One thing I have in my phone is what I call a confidence folder. And the confidence folder is just what I said in earlier in this podcast, like the 15 years I've been able to do things over and over and over. I've gotten testimonials, or I've gotten people say they really love my talk, or why they love the talk. Well, anytime I'm feeling less than, anytime I feel imposter syndrome, I go back to that confidence folder. That confidence folder is a dramatic demonstration. Now I'm leveraging this confidence folder in the stories. I'm changing the story that's in my head. I'm leveraging all of that in order to keep moving, in order to get to the next point, in order to reach out to you, Lou, and say, hey, let's do a follow-up episode, right? It is that leverage point, though. Understanding what your leverage points are, but that leverage point even starts with a story. And it's a story that you create a dramatic demonstration out of. And so I think that was the big aha for me. I was always working on the story and crafting the story. But why my clients were hiring me was not just for the story as much as it's for the leverage point. And that was always fascinating to me, because even when I show the documentary to my clients for the very first time, when they see it, what kept happening is the client would say, oh my gosh, I didn't even remember I said those things, but I needed to hear it. Yeah. And I think there's a fascinating thing that happens when you hear yourself tell a story that you've told before and what you gain from the story. Because even if you're going through hard times, it reminds you of where you've been, what you've been able to do in order to get back on the right track.
Dramatic demonstration. I love the title, I love the name. I also want to ask the question, when you were putting the book together and you were going through the process, and you were simultaneously, because we heard how much work you're doing, working the process through yourself, but also working for your clients that you're delivering great products for. Did you find yourself almost like doubling down or double clicking in your work as you're doing the writing? Like, ooh, am I going through my process the way I need to? Is the story resonating in the right way? You totally were doing. You're doing like the micro analysis, if you would.
Yeah, the micro analysis and making sure that what I'm teaching is actually applicable, right? I think so. There's a few things about the way that I've launched this book. I talked about the audio experience. The other thing I'll talk about is the price for the book. It's not a cheap price. Like, I'll just be honest and come out and say it's not a $20 book. But the reason for that is because we know through stats and statistics that people don't read. Some people buy books but don't read them, or buy books and don't implement. And my biggest thing was, okay, if someone's going to pick up this book, is it going to be applicable? Because the reason is not necessarily to hire me. I only take on a small amount of clients a year. Even on the consulting side, I do more consulting than I do production. And even on that side, I only take on a few number of clients a year. Can someone pick up this book and actually apply it? And so that's why I kind of, every time I was working on a project, or I didn't say this about the book. The book is actually a breakdown of 3 different projects that I did, 3 different clients who are in different industries. And I show you how they not only craft their stories, but then leverage the stories. You're seeing their results. And I wanted to make sure that not only was I telling the truth, but can someone pick up this book and actually apply the lessons that I'm teaching? This is not a step-by-step, do this, then do this. It's more of principles that you learn, because if you learn the principles, you can apply it in many different ways, many different industries. That's literally how I've built my business, is through learning what other people in other industries are doing and then applying it in my own. And that's the way that I've laid out this book. Can you understand the principle in order to apply it in a creative way on your own? And I think I would like to believe I've done a great job of that, because I showed 3 different clients and how they've crafted their story and then leveraged their story. I just happen to be a conduit of it.
Let's do this. I want to do the plug part. I want to do something different that we never did on the show before with you. And then I got a little bonus question here. Okay. So first of all, share with listeners all the places people can find Dramatic Demonstration, best places you want to plug them to. We will put it all in the show notes. The viewers.
Yes, I'll make it really easy. It's judecharles.co/book. Jude Charles, my first and last name, .co/book. You'll find the how to purchase the book and the audiobook as well. The audiobook is exclusively available for free on Spotify right now.
Listeners need to know that you should get the audiobook, and you should specifically listen to my lovely 2 cents of the book, because I'm in it. And I'm honored to be there, by the way. Thank you for having me in there anytime.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Jude, let's do I want to do Fun Street with you. And because I don't think we did it the way we did it, because I'm trying to remember when you were on the program, but I don't think we did the speed round. So here's what I want to do. I want to do the speed round with you right now.
Cool.
And then I want to talk. I'm going to add something at the end, and we're going to go a little different. We don't have to be so fast on that last part, is what I'm getting at. So,
okay, got it.
So what I want to actually do is start this off first, a little slower, with there's been a ton of streaming content out there, and there's been a ton of documentaries. I have probably watched more documentaries in the last 2+ years than I have in my entire life. To someone that makes documentaries, is there one that you saw, not produced by yourself, something that you saw that totally connected and resonated you more so than others?
Yeah, I'm gonna cheat, because I watch a lot of documentaries too, and there's one that I've watched, I think 2 days ago actually, that I fell in love with in a way that I didn't think I would. So Carl Icahn's documentary on HBO recently came out, and I watched it over the weekend. I have heard of Carl's name, financier, billion-dollar guy. The way they humanize him in that documentary, with seeing his wife, seeing his kids, seeing how he interacts with them, it's a way that I love to do it too, but it was just magical. It doesn't even seem like he's a billionaire. He's just a human being, and that's what I loved about it. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, that is so on my list. I'm so glad you said it. There's a reason. More than a decade ago, there was an unbelievable interaction that took place on CNBC with Carl Icahn and I'm blanking on his name.
Ackerman,
Ackerman, correct.
Ackerman, yeah.
And that was over the green. I forgot the name of the company. Which one of those?
Herbalife, I think it was.
Herbalife, right? One was tanking it, one was an investor in it, and they got on the air and got into an absolute pissing match, and it was unbelievable. And I was sitting on a trading desk in Wall Street. We were watching like every TV in the whole floor had this stuff on. And I had never witnessed anything like that before, where a guy was basically like calling. It was a bully fight in a schoolyard fight taking place
on live TV.
Live TV. And what always gets the credit is the commentator for CNBC who just let them go. And that was not an easy, as a facilitator, as a host, that is not an easy thing to deliver. And what he did, I thought was just epic. So it would always stick in my mind. All right, let's do the speed round. This is how this works, Jude. I'm going to ask you something. I want the first thing that comes to your mind. Some of these things lift you up, motivate you, make you feel good. They basically make you thrive. You ready?
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay. Of late, a song that you love to hear, or maybe one that pumps you up.
That's again, I'm going to cheat. Hey Jude, Beatles song.
Yeah, that's true. I think we did that. I think we hit that the last time.
Of
late, a favorite food in the South Florida area.
Ooh.
It's not a dessert that you love to eat.
Mangoes.
Okay. A favorite dessert in this particular area that you love to get.
Oh, dessert. Cheesecake. So there's a white truffle raspberry cheesecake that I love to eat specifically. Yeah.
Today, an activity you wish you did more of.
Ooh. Meditation.
Yeah. An activity you wish you did less of.
Work.
If I could snap my fingers and you could be anywhere in the world, where is Jude Charles right now?
Maldives. I've never been, and I want to go. Yeah.
The last question is, you mentioned you work with a limited number of clients. I'm not trying to put one over the other, but is there a piece of work that you delivered that dramatically demonstrated their uniqueness better than another? I know I'm not comparing it. I just want that whole dramatic demonstration of some of the work you've done this past year.
Yeah, I think Stefan Georgi is the one. He is a copywriter and entrepreneur. But the way I always position is how do you make copywriting sexy? How do you make it interesting to watch? It was a challenge to do and I think that was the other reason I led to Burnout, because it was probably my most challenging project that I've worked on. He is not a boisterous guy. He's not over the top. He's not a Tony Robbins kind of guy, but he loves what he does and he loves to mentor others. And I had to bring that to life in a very dramatic way that I've never done before. And I think that's the one that stands out to me, because every time I go back and look at it, it's like, this is some of my best work.
I like it.
Yep.
First of all, so great to have you back on the program. I'm glad you're constantly rebounding, which is the new term we're going to use here.
Yes.
Dramatic demonstration, how to attract premium clients and scale your business with visual storytelling. Go to judecharles.co. You could also find them anywhere on social at Jude Charles on social. I'll put that link up there before we sign out here. And my friend, great to have you back on. Continue the journey, man, and keep telling those stories.
Lou, thank you for having me, man. Your show is amazing. And like I said, congratulations on over 700. That's not easy. A lot of people start podcasts and then stop them. You're not one of those people. And I'm proud to say that, call you a friend and to say that I know you. So glad to be back. And
now that we learned that we're literally like within 3 square miles of each other, which is why we didn't do this in person, I have no idea.
Right.
We're going to have to grab a mango, I think is what we're going to have to do.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
Man, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
You got it. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep moving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.